These aren't random fights. They're mind games crafted to trap you in a toxic loop. Break the hidden script before it destroys your relationships. Are you brave enough to learn how? In Games People Play, psychiatrist Eric Berne reveals a groundbreaking perspective on human interaction. Have you ever felt like you are stuck in a conversational loop, having the same arguments or unsatisfying discussions with your spouse, boss, or friends over and over again? You may feel frustrated or misunderstood, but you might not realize that you are an unwitting participant in a psychological game. These games are not about fun. They are complex, unconscious scripts we follow to get hidden psychological payoffs, often at the expense of genuine connection and intimacy. Berne's revolutionary framework, Transactional Analysis, gives you the tools to see these patterns for what they are. By understanding the games you and others play, you can begin to step outside of them. This isn't about blaming yourself or others, but about gaining awareness. This summary will walk you through the core concepts of transactional analysis, showing you how to recognize the hidden dynamics in your daily conversations. By the end, you will be equipped to break free from these limiting patterns and move toward more authentic, rewarding, and game-free relationships. The first step to understanding games is recognizing the 3 different ego states that exist within you and within everyone you interact with. In his book, Berne identifies these as the parent, the adult, and the child. These are not just concepts, but observable realities. You shift between them constantly, and they dictate how you behave, think, and feel. The parent ego state is your internal collection of rules and attitudes you learned from your parents. When you find yourself saying things like, "You should always, or acting in a critical or nurturing way, you are likely in your parent. The adult ego state is your rational, objective, data-processing self. It is unemotional and deals with the here and now. When you calmly evaluate a situation, weigh pros and cons, or solve a problem, your adult is in charge. Finally, the child ego state contains all the impulses, feelings, and experiences you had as a child. This is the source of your spontaneity, creativity, joy, and also your fears and insecurities. Recognizing which ego state you are in, and which ego state the person you are talking to is in, is the foundation of transactional analysis. Building on this concept, communication flows through what Berne calls transactions, which are exchanges between 2 people's ego states. Communication proceeds smoothly as long as transactions are complementary, meaning the response you get is from the ego state you expect. For example, if your adult asks your partner's adult, "Do you know where my keys are?" and their adult replies, "They're on the kitchen counter," that is a complementary transaction. However, communication breaks down when a transaction is crossed. Imagine you ask the same adult question, "Do you know where my keys are?" But your partner replies from their critical parent to your child, "Why don't you ever keep track of your own things? You're not a child anymore." The conversation is now crossed. The original topic is abandoned, and you are pulled into a different, often negative dynamic. These crossed transactions are often the opening moves in a game. So why do we fall into these patterns? Berne explains that humans have a fundamental structure hunger, a deep-seated need to fill our waking hours and avoid the pain of boredom. We structure our time in several ways, from the most superficial to the most meaningful. Rituals like saying, "Hi, how are you?" are simple, predictable exchanges. Pastimes are more involved, like chit-chat about sports or politics at a party. Activities involve work or goal-oriented projects. The most fulfilling way to structure time is through intimacy, which is a game-free, honest, and open connection with another person. However, true intimacy can be frightening and is rare. To fill the void between boring pastimes and scary intimacy, people play games. Games provide a high level of engagement and stroking or recognition without the risks of true unguarded connection. A game, according to Berne, is a series of ulterior transactions with a concealed motivation and a predictable, dramatic payoff. In other words, what is said on the surface is not what is really going on underneath. Consider the classic game Berne calls "If It Weren't For You." A wife complains that her domineering husband restricts her from doing things like learning to dance. At the social level, this is a complaint. But at the psychological level, She chose a domineering husband precisely to prevent her from facing her own fear of social situations like dancing. Her payoff is twofold. She gets to avoid her fear, and she gets to blame her husband, which reinforces her position that all men are tyrants. Her husband, in turn, gets to play the role of the master of the house. Both players get what their unconscious needs, but they sacrifice the possibility of a truly intimate relationship. The ultimate goal, then, is not to get better at playing games, but to stop playing them altogether and achieve autonomy. Berne defines autonomy as the recovery of three key capacities: awareness, spontaneity, and intimacy. Awareness is the ability to see and hear the world for yourself, in the here and now, not through the filter of what your parents taught you. It is about experiencing reality directly. Spontaneity is the freedom to choose your feelings and behaviors from all three of your ego states, reacting genuinely to the situation rather than playing a pre-programmed script. Finally, intimacy is the game-free, candid expression of your authentic self with another person. It is risky, but it is also the most rewarding form of human contact, and it is what becomes possible when you decide to put the games away. The main takeaway of games people play is that many of our most frustrating and repetitive social interactions are not random, but are psychological games governed by unspoken rules and aimed at hidden payoffs. These games are learned in childhood and are driven by our parent, adult, and child ego states. By learning to identify these ego states in yourself and others, recognizing when a transaction becomes crossed, and understanding the concealed motives behind a game, you can make a conscious choice to stop playing. This empowers you to break free from self-defeating patterns and move toward the far more satisfying goals of autonomy, spontaneity, and true game-free intimacy.